Hello to you, welcome to the programme. The fight against so-called Islamic State has stepped up after the attacks in Paris, which killed 129 people. Today, the focus is on how the terrorists are funded, with a commission set up by Russia's President Putin. Well, it's thought that the militant group IS has an annual income of around $2 billion. Now, the US Treasury says it's probably the best funded terrorist group in the world. Up to $500 million a year. That comes from the illicit sale of oil. It's sold to smugglers who then sell it on through middlemen. The UN says that 8 million people live in the territory controlled by the group, and taxation and extortion is a key source of revenue. That itself brings in hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Well, the group has also looted up to $1 billion from banks when it took over the Iraqi city of Mosul back in 2014. Sally.
Well, to get more detail on this, I'm joined by Dr. Sally Leivesleigh, Director of New Risk. They look at issues of terrorism and security. Sally, thank you for coming in. So as Ben outlined there, this is an organisation that is self-funding, and from that point of view, it's doing rather well, isn't it?
Well, what we have is a totally different situation to the other terrorist groups. You cannot easily disrupt an actual state with land and with revenues and with such resources. So their resilience against disruption means we're in for a very long time with them.
Now, prior to the terrorist attacks in Paris of last week, this was looked into in great detail because, of course, there was that issue of how does this organisation operate? How do we try and curb that? What conclusions are drawn about that, and do we have any more insight given what happened in Paris?
Well, the stimulus now with the G20 nations is that the leaders have to cooperate, because so much of this is banking sort of through the internet, and also it's coordination of data collections. And unless the country leaders will take that on and look at the issues of privacy versus trying to really find these plots on the run, and it's to find inside all our countries who is being recruited.
So in a sense, it is the technology, it's the online banking, it's the social media for recruitment, it's that whole world that is key to this, I assume, and it's at a time when big companies that provide that are fighting with governments over privacy.
Yes, it is, and unfortunately this is a public safety issue, because marauding attacks across cities like Paris mean that the finances of cities like Paris are going to take a hit. So IS is now becoming a very expensive terrorist group because they're causing us a cost within our own countries as well.
Now, as you say in some of your analysis, it's about demand and supply. It's looking at the basics of how business operates, and how do you affect the supply chain? Talk us through that analysis.
Well, what's very good is the countries have got together and they understand that a lot of young recruits are self-financing through family, friends, crowdfunding, and they're using social media techniques. So getting over there is obviously an easy situation. But the state itself needs energy, it needs fuel. So what is happening is obviously in trying to disrupt, if you hit a fuel convoy, you may be stopping a fighting effort that ISIS is needing. So you've got that immediate impact within the Islamic State by what countries like our countries and Russia are doing. But back home, while we're looking at what's over there, we're missing the point that we have to upgrade these patterns of buying types of equipment online, small bits of funding, people who are quite educated who are never in a job, and you need large data sets in the analysis.
All right, Dr. Sally Leivesleigh, we appreciate you coming in. Very interesting, so much more to talk about. And as you say, governments are talking about this and trying to coordinate more and more as time goes by.
Yeah, difficult to know where to start though. Let's bring you up to date though with some of the other business stories, because reports say the US drugs giant Pfizer is in talks to buy its Irish rival Allergan, maker of Botox. It's a deal that could be worth $150 billion. That would make it the biggest ever seen in the drugs industry. Now that comes despite the US Treasury's plans to clamp down on so-called tax inversions. That is where a big US firm buys a smaller foreign rival that moves its headquarters to avoid US tax. America's central bank, the Federal Reserve, has given its strongest hint yet